Hello everyone, and welcome to this next instalment of Komodo Dragon's openings. We are looking this time at 1d4 knight f6 and Nimzo-Indian type lines. So basically everything that starts with d4, knight f6, c4 and then e6. So if Komodo Dragon is pressed to play this line, it'll play knight f3. But let's start off with knight c3, which is a Nimzo-Indian. And we'll start with that because that's the opening that I played throughout all my professional career. And now bishop b4 is what Komodo Dragon wants, and that's really not surprising. But what was surprising to me was Komodo Dragon's choice in this position. White's got a number of moves, of course, and there are three main ones really. There's queen c2, there's e3, and there's also f3 as well. And Komodo Dragon, little to my surprise, went for e3. So this is the Rubinstein Nimzo-Indian. It was what I played throughout my professional career. I have to say that, well, when I started playing again, I picked it up again, but I really ran out of ideas somehow. And you've got to say that Komodo doesn't really make a great case for picking it up again. Let's have a look what Komodo finds. So castles is its main move. And now bishop d3, d5, and now slightly unusual, a3. This was really supposed to be a mistake in the old books. Knight f3 was played, but I mean, to be honest, it's been very difficult to find a white advantage in these lines. The Karpov system with c takes d4, e takes d4, and b6 is exceedingly solid. And I mean, again, I've spent must have spent a few months on this line in total, but I haven't really found anything that's particularly dangerous. And the problem with this line as well is that there are so many variations that are very little known but quite decent. For example, the Larsen system with a3 and then bishop a5 is also completely fine for black as far as I'm aware. These moves, bishop a5, are very, very annoying. I mean, when black takes on c3 very early, that makes things clear. I mean, this is the old-fashioned way of playing the Nimzo-Indian. Makes things very clear early on, and at least white knows exactly what the structure is and can work on that. But a move like bishop a5, it keeps the structure indeterminate, keeps the tension against here. And for example, if you play something like d takes c5, then we can go bishop takes c3 and give you these appalling pawns on the queen side. So a3 was thought to be a mistake, really. We take on c4, we take on c3, and we go c5. I mean, I have actually played this as white as well. I tried some ideas with knight e2. But actually, Komodo Dragon simply wants to play knight f3, queen c7, and then bishop e2. And this is actually a very sensible way of playing. You're just castling, bishop on b2, rook on c1 and c4. And, well, we're hardly talking massive advantage here for white, but we've got the two bishops, a centre that's reasonably well protected, and, well, I mean, that's got to give white some possibilities. I mean, Komodo Dragon gives this a small advantage to white, you know, and now I've seen actually that this has been played by a number of good players as well, so this is presumably the latest thinking. So that's very interesting, this move 6a3. The one thing that that worries me slightly about this is the move c5 immediately. And there are a couple of possibilities against c5 rather than for castles. Now, knight e2 is what I've played for a lot of my life. Had some very good wins in this line. But I've always been worried about two things. Either Nigel Short's move d6, and after a3 we play bishop a5, or even the better d5, and after a3 bishop a5. And it's actually a variation that I've known about for about 30 years, but thankfully never had to face it. But it is very, very difficult to find any significant white advantage in there. Yeah, I mean, I'm just not at all happy about white's prospects for an advantage. So that is actually possible. So actually Komodo thinks a lot about these lines and then decides in the end to play bishop d3. And now I think you can play d5 in this position. And the point is again that if you go a3, we don't go bishop c3, after which we can actually just do the same as before. Queen c7, black's a move earlier on this, but still bishop e2 is fine, just getting out of the attack with c takes d4. But actually after a3 we can just go bishop a5 here again, and yeah, it's the same sort of problem that there's this tension on the queen side which white can't get rid of, but until that tension is resolved it's really hard to find good development for white. And in actual fact, Komodo goes for the Larsen system here with castles, and well, this is the main line that it gives. Knight a5 it gives. There's a lot of theory on queen takes d1, rook d1, knight e4, which is supposed to be a small edge for white, but yeah, not very serious. Komodo Dragon gives knight a5, bishop d3, knight d7, which is quite an interesting way of picking up the c5 pawn, and ends up with a 0.12 evaluation, which is well, completely equal in fact. So yeah, this is yeah, I mean, Komodo Dragon does have some ideas, but still, you know, it's it doesn't look very promising for white. Nimzo-Indian's a good opening. So I made Komodo have a look at some different lines. For example, queen c2. And here it picks up a line that that's been played an awful lot at the elite level. Castles, a3 takes, and d5. And well, in my day, professional day, this was thought to be, you know, really rather slow for black. I mean, black either had to start to counterplay immediately with d5, or, you know, with c5, these sort of ideas. And but this this rather slow way of castling first and then just playing d5, yeah, was supposed to be just a nice advantage for white. But, well, I mean, Vladimir Kramnik, if I'm not mistaken, started playing like this. And, yeah, it's just turned out very nicely, really. I mean, black just gets plenty of temp against the white queen, opens up the centre. And, you know, there's some weaknesses, but there's also the queen side to attack there. And, well, you know, with some accurate computer analysis, this is just going to be equal. And, well, there was a recent game, Geary against So at Stavanger 2022, which just ended in a draw, and actually Komodo Dragon follows that line all the way through. So yeah, this variation, castles and then d5, looks to be a really solid equalizer. Finally, we could have a look at f3, and this is yeah, much sharper in actual fact. And here Komodo likes to go for this move c5, and I've spent a lot of time analysing this this line in general, and this variation with my engines, because I was very keen to play this as white. I mean, white sets up a big centre, but it's also, yeah, pressured, you know, in all sorts of different ways, and in a way it's not too surprising that the engines managed to find a way of increasing the pressure so much that that centre has to fall. And well, takes, c4, a4, knight d7, bishop e2, queen b6. This is all theory. We're following a reasonably strong correspondence game, and there's been many elite games as well. And well, you just see the queen stopping the king from castling, and the knights attacking these centre pawns. I mean, white has plenty of interesting resources, but by the time you're getting to this, you're starting to see that black doesn't really have any problems anymore. And well, knight c6, f6, bishop a3, rook f7, rook d1, bishop e6. Black's pieces are active, and well, all of these pawns are rather exposed. So bishop b4 is Komodo's novelty in this position, but it doesn't lead to very much, and the position is just equal. So yeah, I mean, this Nimzo-Indian looking pretty good for black, and well, you can see why. You know, why does Komodo Dragon not want to go into these mainline c4, d4, c4 lines? Well, stuff like the Nimzo-Indian, for example, is a very big reason. It just doesn't really see any way that that white can have any big advantage. So yeah, better to play something like the London system that keeps well, a bit more play in the position, because you're colliding less quickly, basically. Now, one thing to mention here is that just after knight c3, another idea is to play c5 here. This is often a move order that's used to go into the modern Benoni. And this was something really interesting, actually, because, yeah, I mean, with black, all the black players take on d5 and play d6. And why do you do that? The reason that you do this is that you want to take on d5 whilst white's e-pawn is still on e2. If you play a move like g6, for example, which is Komodo's main line, then after e4, for example, d6, knight f3, e takes d5, then white can play e takes d5. And this is simply leads to a position where white's got a nice advantage in space, a weak pawn on d6 to attack, and the centre's very stable. There's none of this destabilizing b5 stuff, and no pawn on e4 for black to attack. So in general, this is supposed to lead to a very stable advantage. Now that's the orthodoxy that I've learned, and actually it's not so far off the mark. In general, you know, when you get to all sorts of Benoni positions, if you put c takes d5, well, the engines always consider that white's better, but that's less an advantage than if you allow white to play e takes d5. However, the engines are all incredibly suspicious of the so-called flick knife variation, and that's this move bishop b5 check. It's been known for ages and ages, always been known to be difficult for black, and well, the engines confirm it. What's the big problem? The big problem is that knight d7 or bishop d7 allow white to play e4 to e5, and the variations are very complicated. There's been a lot of human analysis over the years, but of course once you put an engine onto it, well, the mystery is finished. You know, the tactical wins are just found. So black has to play knight fd7, and then white plays a4, knight a6, knight f3, knight b4 castles, a6, bishop e2, and castles. And you know, what is black's problem in this type of position? Well, the point is that, you know, the key thing for black in the Benoni is that black can generate pressure against the e4 pawn. And either, you know, white's got to leave the e4 pawn exposed so that black can attack it, or white restricts himself in the opening, you know, sort of plays quite cautiously in order to keep the e4 pawn protected, and that gives black some extra opportunities to develop. For example, in this position, an example of this is this system, f3. I mean, with f3, you're protecting the e4 pawn, but you're not playing f4, so, you know, black isn't under immediate threat, and black's got a bit of extra time to work out its development. So this move bishop b5 check forces the knight away from attacking the pawn on e4 back to d7, and that just slows black's counterplay enormously. And well, you know, on top of this e4 f4 is a very aggressive setup. White can play you know, ideas like f5 and bishop g5 and attack. You know, this is what makes it really difficult, and the engines just really hate this for black, and they want to avoid it at all costs. So that's why in this position they're willing to accept white playing e4 and e takes d5 simply to avoid this flick knife variation. And how do you avoid it? Well, you don't take on d5. That's the basic thing. So there's no bishop b5 check. And this is Komodo's main line. So bishop g7, bishop e2, castles, castles, and now you take on d5. Okay. You know, white takes on, plays e takes d5, gets the good structure, but this is better than being mated in a flick knife variation. So how does black continue? It's quite interesting what Komodo suggests. Knight d7, queen c2, knight e8. So black's actually going to play f5. Well, the exchange of light squared bishops for the knight has given black some extra space in the position. It was a bit cramped, so losing a minor piece is not so bad. And then we're going to grab some space on the king side and in the center with f5, and then this knight comes to g7 to cover the e6 square. Very typical way of playing, and well, yeah, it's never 100% easy, but yeah, very often the engines can hold these types of positions. If you're Leela or a Stockfish, it's yeah. But it's, I mean, it's very nice for white, but probably tenable for black. But it's a very big thing, really. You know, just Komodo Dragon really rejecting, you know, I think 40, 50 years of automatic recapture on d5, just for a slower move, just to avoid a dangerous variation. So well worth remembering that one. So let's have a look. I mean, after c4, e6, we've got a couple of other ideas. We've got knight f3, and we've also got g3. I mean, g3 is going for the Catalan here. Yeah, d5, we can go bishop g2 or knight f3. Yeah, the one thing that interested me in this position was, for example, bishop b4 check. How are you responding to that? Well, actually, we end up getting into some sort of Catalan here. Bishop d2, bishop e7 is Komodo Dragon's suggestion, and we see this very often in Queen's Indian and Catalan type positions. And now, after this, we're back into a Catalan position, and Komodo Dragon actually chooses the most solid system. Actually, I've played this system a lot as black in the Catalan, and yeah, it's a very solid, very good opening. And yeah, I mean, this is more or less the main line nowadays. White picks up the two bishops, which in principle is very good, but the position is kind of flat, really. There's not much going on, so it's not so bad here. And knight f8, and well, this is a game of Vidit against Robson, which actually black managed to win here, amazingly enough. Shouldn't really happen, but bishop e1 is Komodo's novelty, but yeah, black just develops very, very normally and calmly. And yeah, as long as black plays carefully, then yeah, it really is odds on for the draw there. Komodo assesses it with a 0.20 evaluation. So yeah, very very unusual way of playing the Bogo-Indian. You know, bishop b4, bishop d2, bishop e7. But the idea of it really is that you know, white does want to play normally b3 and bishop b2, and dragging the bishop to d2. Normally this bishop has to go somewhere else. So black isn't really losing a tempo at all, because the bishop is reaching f4 or g5 in 2 moves, and by the same token you manage to stop the bishop from going to b2, which would be its ideal square. So that was one thing of g3, and then finally let's have a look at knight f3. If you go b6, then Komodo is playing g3, and yeah, I mean, this is the move that all the engines play. It's really the only variation of the Queen's Indian that the engines consider dangerous. And of course, well, we saw, if you saw the overview, you saw that AlphaZero, you know, was playing this and playing some very sharp ideas early on. Komodo doesn't do those, but again, we get into this very, you can see the check here again, into this very solid system, this time with a bishop on a6 rather than b7, castles, rook d1, knight d7, a4, and there are many moves in this position. It's a big theoretical position. Actually, Komodo considers that you can simply play the simple c5, and with yeah, basically more or less equality. Yeah, not necessarily 100% easy for black. Black's got to be extremely accurate, but the position is quite equal. So that again is quite interesting. What else do we have after knight f3? Well, there's bishop b4 check, the Bogo-Indian. If bishop d2, I'm sure you can guess what Komodo Dragon wants. Bishop e7 again, just then afterwards just aiming to play d5, and you'll normally end up in some sort of Queen's Gambit declined. But Komodo Dragon actually wants to play knight bd2 in this position, and just grab the bishop pair. And then b6, a3, bishop d2, bishop d2, bishop b7, e3, knight e4, and then this very interesting move, bishop c1, just to stop black from getting back the two bishops. And yeah, Komodo Dragon considers this to be slightly better, 0.48 for white. It's fair enough. Yeah, I mean, it's not a problem there. I mean, there are plenty of other moves. I mean, bishop g5 can also be played. This is quite an unusual line. I haven't seen this one before, really. But Komodo considers it to be slightly better for white. The final thing is, after knight f3, the normal way for black would be to play d5 and go back into a Queen's Gambit decline, and this would be Komodo's choice in this position. And after knight c3, it also wants to play the move that was AlphaZero's favourite back in 2018 when I was looking through its games. That's bishop b4, which is the Ragozin. And this has really turned out to be, at the elite level, it's turned out to be a really solid way of playing with black against 1d4. And well, actually, all of the engines, there were many Stockfish AlphaZero games in this line, and actually they followed the same path, which was not very inspiring for for white, I have to say. E3 castles, rook c1 takes, c5. So simple for black. I mean, you're just playing your bishop to b4, swapping pawns off on c4 and d4, and then just saying equal. You know, it's just is such a simple game sometime. And yeah, this is this has been played quite a bit. Yeah, Mamedyarov against Rajabov was queen takes c3, bishop d7 was Komodo Dragon's move, but this is just completely equal, of course. So Ragozin, definitely a good solution for black. So yeah, that was a little bit of a summary, really. I mean, as you can see, I think you can understand why Komodo is keener on the London system than on these main d4, c4 systems. Certainly against e6, not really getting that much of an edge. Against knight c3, bishop b4 especially, black seems to be doing really well in all sorts of lines. I think, you know, the most interesting line is to go knight f3, and then after b6 we can go g3. You know, this is still the most interesting idea for white. And the other interesting thing was the modern Benoni, where Komodo does not want to take on d5, which is played by 99% of all humans, and really only wants this move order with g6 just to avoid the flick knife variation. So yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, as always, you know, it's some of the stuff is quite well known. A lot I recognise from my professional career. A lot of the judgments, frankly, that I made during my professional career kind of hold, I think, still as well. But then from time to time you get these little illuminations of you know, of insight from Komodo, you know, just things that you haven't thought about, that it just thinks, yeah, well, you can't do this, you know, you have to avoid it, you know, and that makes it very, very interesting. And I think one of the things that you could take away from this series of videos is just a sense of you know, what are the correct lines according to the engines, and then you can you know, with that as a sort of a structure, you know, anything you try, you can sort of fit into that, really, and you'll have a good idea of, you know, am I playing optimally, or am I taking a few risks, am I taking some tiny risks, or am I taking some big risks? And that you know, that can really give you a good overview of the opening, and, well, really improve your opening play. So there we are. Next up is going to be King's Indians.